something for me to do.
Yeah.
You know, regardless of what it was. Even when WrestleMania time came close, there were ideas about picking up some stuff with me and Kane, especially being involved with Lita and Trish. And the whole
do you know what would have happened if you hadn't gotten injured, or was that very week to week also?
If
there was no time off, no interruptions and things, everything went the way.
Oh yeah, no, I would have probably got pushed after that.
Yeah.
Because they were so into what I was doing.
Yeah.
Because I remember there was one time where they said with me and Amy, they said, we really think your acting skills have came a long ways from the beginning of this, and just as a performer, you're really good in the ring, and just there's so many different directions we can go with you now. It's really limitless.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so which was cool, and it just made me want to go out and get healthy and come back again.
So was it the biggest frustration of your career to that point, that you weren't able to take full advantage of that momentum?
Yeah, I mean, that was frustrating. But probably not the biggest frustration of my career, because there have been a lot of frustrations along the way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Probably not the biggest one, but
yeah.
I figured it's cool. I'll go out, I'll get fixed. You know, it's the first time in 7 years, whatever. I've missed any time. Get fixed and come back, and things will be cool.
So.
And that's a big so.
So then you end up. We can fill in some gaps, but let's talk about what happened. The big story, and that is you start figuring out, you get word somehow, and you can tell the story that something weird is going on with your longtime girlfriend. Let's move ahead, and we can fill in some gaps. Talk a little bit about, because the story's been told so many times, how you and Lita got together and all that. You've written about it, but go ahead and just kind of in a nutshell talk about how long you guys had been together, when you established a relationship, and kind of move into then on your own finding out this bombshell that something was going on behind your back.
Well, the first time I met Amy, and it's just, I know you call her Lita, it's still hard for me to get into.
Yeah, either way is fine.
I'd met Amy around January of '99, actually, just when she was trying to get into the wrestling business. They were doing an independent show not far from my house, and I met her there. Seemed like a pretty cool girl. Just talked to her for a little bit. She said, we're doing some more shows in this area, and those guys were interested in bringing Jeff and I in. This is kind of when they were still doing third-party bookings. And I was going, yeah, sure, if you're in this area, I'd love to come there and do the show, whatever.
Yeah.
It's when we were still wearing the plaid tights and stuff. A few weeks later, we actually did a show with those guys, and I remember just hanging out with her, and she was never like the kind of girl I would have envisioned myself being with, especially at that time, but I remember just hanging out with her. She had like a real cool personality to her. And that night after the show, we actually drove back to Charlotte, and we went out to a club and hung out for a while, and I remember, that night we talked for a long time, and we got a tad bit physical, had a little bit of physical interaction that one time, and then we exchanged numbers, and we said, let's keep in contact or whatever. And it was still like, she was just coming out of a relationship that she'd been in for a long time she'd just been with a guy that was he was a singer or a dancer for a band. I'm not exactly sure. And they kind of broke up for a while, and then they were just kind of like seeing each other on and off still after that. It's like a lot of people said, well, she cheated on her first boyfriend with you, and really she didn't, because that's not the way it went. It's just like she was still associated with this guy, but they'd been split from being in a serious relationship for a while.
Yeah.
But anyway, we kind of stayed in contact, and I was busy still doing my wrestling stuff and whatever, and I wasn't worried about getting a girlfriend at this point in my career.
Yeah.
And then, every month or every few weeks, she would come down, we'd hang out, do whatever, and it was just a good time. It was just real easy, no strings attached. We just kind of enjoyed hanging out with each other.
Yeah.
Along this time, she was like really starting to get this bond for me, like a lot more than I was for her. And there was one point where I'd met this girl that'd come along, and we'll just call her Susie for the time being. And Susie now had the kind of looks that I'd always thought about having as a girlfriend. She was just like a blonde bombshell. And I'd met her, and actually me and one of my friends at this time, I'll call him Joe for the time being in this story, Susie and Joe. I hope I can remember that. I'll probably say their real names. But anyway, we both met her at the same time. And I actually started seeing her some. I'd went out with her a few times. And I remember telling Amy, like, hey, I just met this one girl, and I'm really into her, and I'm digging her. I said, and really, I'd rather not see you or really have any physical interaction with you, because I want to try and take this serious and do it right.
Yeah.
And there was actually one line that I said to her that always, Amy would bring this up often. And it was not said in spite at all. I just said, she's just like you. I said, she's really cool. I said, she looks like a supermodel. And I so didn't mean for her to come out that way. And I apologize for that a lot. And she would hit that every once in a while. But so I went out with this girl for a while, and things were okay. It seemed like they were pretty cool. And I was still working on the road a lot at this point. This is when we were around the time of being tag champs, very, very busy, or right before that. And her sister really liked my friend, Joe, a lot more than me, and was kind of persuading her. She said, I think you should go see Joe, or this, that, and the other thing. And there was one scenario where her sister and her husband got Susie and Joe to go out with them. And they went out, and I guess they drank a little bit or whatever that night, and they got together, and they kissed or whatever. And I came back and found out about this from another friend of his. And I just confronted him. I said, well, dude, us being friends, I said, I really am not linked to this girl, but as friends, I don't think it's cool. I said we should probably, if we're going to continue our friendship, just kind of let this girl go. I said, and neither one of us fuck with her if we're going to do that.
Yeah.
And I said, probably, even if you do like her, it's probably going to end up being a choice, either her or me. And he actually chose her. So he kind of ended up going off in a bad road, and eventually he went into a real bad place. And he actually wrestled for a while too. And as he wrestled, eventually he went to work for the WWE, and he eventually got released, and was in a real bad place and became real bad on drugs. Anyway, I started seeing Amy some more at this time, and I would see Amy occasionally here and there. And then I was at a point where that girl had really frustrated me, and then I was on the road, and Jeff and I were fucking maniacs for a few months as far as being on the road and like living the things, being young, hot heartthrobs or whatever. Like we were just kind of doing our thing.
Yeah.
And then once that started playing out and getting a little old, whatever, Amy was just getting to the point where she was getting ready to get a job with the company. And she did get a job, and I remember just vouching for her and saying, yeah, she is. She's been, she's worked real hard, and I think she's got some things that she could do. This is when she was doing Miss Congeniality at ECW, and I always stayed in contact with her. And then she did come to work at the company, and then once she came to work there, that's when we started really hanging out like on a more serious level. I wouldn't say right there we'd say we were boyfriend, girlfriend, or we were in love, but we started hanging out on a more serious level. So she came in. Obviously we started, at first she kind of traveled on her own or did her thing. She had a little bit of a different deal. But then once she kind of split from S.A. Rios and started working with us, and people knew that we were like, we never really spoke about it, but they knew that we were like together, at least in a capacity, when people weren't around.
Yeah.
And she started traveling with myself and Jeff, and it was just like, every night we were just like best friends. Like we would just check into the hotel and we'd be there. It's just like being with your best friend, but having all these great benefits, as far as being a female.
Yeah.
And really just both of us fell like so much in love with each other that we really didn't even know it at this point. It was just so natural and so organic, and it was so great.
I was just going to say organic, that's, yeah.
And it's just unbelievable because you didn't, like, we weren't even, and I just remember the first time she had wanted to say this for a long time, and she said, I loved you, and it kind of freaked me out a little bit because I've never been involved in a heavy relationship like that.
Yeah.
And then just, I knew that there was a part of me that did, and it was a couple weeks, I was a couple weeks behind her with that, but I said, I do with you too, and it's odd because I don't even know how we got here.
Yeah.
It's just like one of those things, but I mean, I could see us getting here, but it's just like, we really weren't expecting it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then just things were great, man, and it was just, that point was just such a fun time in my life because, like, I didn't even think about wanting to be with other girls, and the same thing with her.
Yeah.
And, it's just like traveling with your best friend, who's also your girlfriend, and you're doing, your dream job. So it was very, very cool. And then it just kept getting stronger and stronger to the point came where she broke her neck, actually.
Yeah.
And whenever she broke her neck, that was devastating to me. I mean, it was to her, too, because she kind of became a different person at that point. Just because she lost so much of her confidence, because her thing was she was just always so independent and always so strong. And now she felt like everything was kind of taken away from her. And I remember, actually, we were going overseas, and the company was real cool. They let me go to her surgery, and I stayed there, and I flew on a commercial flight one day later overseas to pick up and do the rest of the tour. And it was just still very hard. I would come home, and I would spend time with Amy, and I would want to be with Amy. And just as she had this broken neck, she had moved to Sanford, where she lived only probably 10 or 15 minutes from where I lived. And the whole reason she ever moved there in the first place was to be close to me.
Yeah.
Just so we would be around, just because she definitely liked me a lot more than I liked her in the beginning.
Yeah.
And now she had her place there, and I would almost come home, and I would, run errands with her, or I would try and spend time with her, and she just, like, was in such a bad place because she felt like she'd lost what all she had, and she just didn't feel like herself at this point.
Yeah.
And just the more time went on, and I was on the road 5 or 6 days a week and doing appearances, and she was at home, and she just kind of moved there to be with me, and she felt like she didn't really have any friends, or, now she didn't feel like herself, and now I'm back on the road, and it's like, not that we drifted apart or stopped loving each other, but there was a point during that time where it just became different because she kind of pulled away from me just because she didn't feel like who she was, and then I was just on the road all the time, and I was kind of wrapped up into doing my stuff because that's when I was the most successful that I've ever been, too.
Yeah.
And ironically enough, it was a huge temptation for me, which nobody really knows this story. This is the first time that it'll ever come out, is that this girl, Susie, that I had such a huge crush on before, had split up with this boyfriend, and he was gone, and she knew he was a loser. She regretted doing everything she did so bad. She all of a sudden got my number and called me out of the blue one day while I was on the road with Shannon. Told her, I just want to see what's going on. Were you still with Amy? Oh, yeah, I just want to see, and it's just good to talk to you, and I'm so proud of you. You're doing so good. I told Shannon, that was odd. I said, that was Susie. And he's like, really? Wow, isn't that shocking that she's calling you, whatever. So then I start, I remember as soon as I went home, too, that's one thing I told Amy. I said, yeah, that girl Susie, you remember her? She just called me. She said, oh, great. She said, that's great. She'd called. That's probably the last thing she wants to hear at this point she's at in her life. I was going, she said, well, you shouldn't talk to her anymore. I was going, I don't have intentions to, really, but she just called me. So,
and did you have a friendship with Susie before? You knew who she knew you well enough to call?
No,
Just-
I mean, I'd never talked to her since, like, I said, kind of, I told my friend it was a choice, kind of me or her. You know, that's the girl I'm
That's
telling you about.
going. So that's the last time you had talked to her at that
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
Gotcha.
definitely. I hadn't
That's
talked
what.
to her
Yep.
since then. Yeah, it'd
Yep.
been years.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
But she just realized, she's like,
That's what
whoa,
I'm checking
boy,
out.
did I screw up.
Yeah.
You know, and then she'd called in, and I remember telling Amy that, and Amy's like, oh, great. Yeah, that's all I need.
Yep.
You know, well, it's cool, believe me, don't worry.
Yeah.
You and me, we make a team. And then, you know, a couple weeks passed, and she called again. And then, you know, I would talk to her, and I think there was a part of me that felt, like, oh, you know, this is pretty cool that, you know, now this bitch really wants to talk to me now, you know,
Yeah.
after this one thing we went through. And then she called again, and, you know, I'd speak to her here and there. I never called her, but I said, well, it's fine if you call and want to talk. And I remember I'd tell Amy when I talked to her, yeah, but she's real cool. I really don't have any interest in her. But then, like, this was bothering Amy, and I saw that it was bothering Amy. And this girl was, like, really persistent in pursuing me. And there was one time she said, well, I've been trying to get one of your books. This is right after her book came out. I've been trying to get one of your books, but I haven't been able to get one. I was just wondering if you have a copy, if I could get one, da-da-da-da. And I remember one time I was going to the airport, and I said, okay, well, if you want, I'll just stop by and meet you here, and I'll give you a copy of the book. And I actually stopped and met her and gave her a copy of the book. And she said, well, can we get together and, like, go out and do something sometime or whatever? I mean, are you just still up with Amy? And it's like that. And I was like, well, I don't know. I said, here's this. I said, you know, me and Amy are kind of serious, but, and I just knew there was a part of me that was like, kind of like, whoa, I'm kind of like starting to be lured into something
Yeah,
here, and I need
yeah.
to pull back.
Starting
a
to
little
grow into something very slowly that you
bit.
didn't
Well,
want it to.
yeah, but then I got on that flight that night because it was a girl that I'd envisioned myself being with at one point in my life, and a girl that really had all my looks. And now Amy'd kind of, you know, she was at home hurt, and I wasn't around her all the time, and she just kind of like been something different than what she was.
She withdrew a little bit from.
A little bit,
things,
maybe.
Yeah.
But then, like, I got on that plane and I flew, and it seemed like I was going to Rochester. And I remember sitting on that plane, and I was just like, what the fuck am I doing? I said, I got to stop this right now, because if I don't, then I'm really going to fuck up a good thing. I said, sure, Amy may be hurt or whatever. I said, but I got to stop this right now. So cold turkey, you know, I told the girl, I said, look, I don't need to talk to you anymore. I got a girlfriend at home, and this is what it's all about, and that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
You know, just being with you is just, sure, I'm not doing anything wrong now, but it could lead to doing something wrong.
Yeah.
You know, and so imagine, you know, how this story's going to work out already as we go ahead. But anyway, I'd stop that right there, and then this girl had still called me some after I told her not to call me anymore, that I shouldn't talk to her, and I ended up changing my number out of the whole thing. And then Amy had got back, and she was healthy again. She got back on TV, and I just remember after having that one point of where, like, we were never had problems, but there was you know, where we kind of lost that closeness just from being away from each other. And it wasn't that we really lost closeness; it was just that I was on the road so much, and she was at home.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? It was
Yep.
just that being separated.
Yeah.
And that's why we both made a point. We said we need to be together, because like if we don't, then it's going to be bad.
Yeah.
And I remember when she came back, I was wrestling. I was sick. I'd actually had strep throat, and I wrestled a house show that was probably 4 hours away from the pay-per-view. The pay-per-view was Hershey. That was going to be her return to the wrestling ring. And I was sick that day, and I asked Shannon, I said, hey, man, I think we can make it and get to the show in time for Amy's match, and I'd like to. And he's like, all right, man. And I remember I drove like a fucking maniac all the way there, like 100 miles an hour. And I got there, and as soon as I got in, walked backstage, walked in through the curtain, like her music hit right when I walked in front of the monitor. Her music hit, and I thought I was going to miss it because traffic was bad, construction was bad. Her music hit, she went and wrestled. She messed up her teeth that night, but I went up to grill, and she walked through, and like just when she saw me, just knowing that I was sick and that I wasn't going to be there, and it was her first match back, she was already so emotional just from having that and being hurt, and she saw me and just broke into tears, and I did too. I just remember we left, and she was like, tell everybody thanks for the match, and we just walked outside, and I just remember holding her hand and walking outside the building, and we were just both so, to me, that was like, this is the girl that I should be with at that time.
Yeah.
Because there were so many things that said it's right, you know, to be here.
Yep.
And, you know, we both definitely felt like that. And then we ended up coming, you know, I came to Raw because I stressed it, you know, we'd both asked Vince, and we did that. And, you know, how that happens just by accident. There was, you know, the thing where Amy did fire up, and it kind of did bad for both of us.
Yep.
But whatever, we said, fuck it. We're a team. You know, if one of us does bad, we both do bad, and we'll work out this together. And we did. We ended up doing the whole thing, Kane storyline. During that whole time with Kane, like, we were back on the road. There was, we had a dog. I've never been a big pet lover, but now since I'm so in love with Amy, you know, and I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, where I may have questioned this before, you know, I'd been building my house and she'd been helping me. I said, look, come on, get rid of your stuff, move in, let's do this, let's make this a serious deal. We had a dog together. She'd really turned me on to dogs, and we actually lost our dog in a real bad accident, and even brought us together close. During that whole time with Kane, just like it was perfect.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? While we were on the road. And then I get hurt, and I'm going home. So the first couple months of that, she was just real sad because she was like traveling along. She didn't want to travel with anybody. Then she traveled with some of the girls, but she was just so different from them because our relationship had been just grown, just like being best friends and doing whatever for each other, but just literally being best friends, you know, and just like knowing that we're there for each other. So as time goes on, I'm at home, and there's a part of me at home where I'd kind of remove myself from the business because I'd just been so about the business, and I just started enjoying things at home, and I was like fixing up my house, and I was thinking about, wow, it would be cool to be at home and be married or have kids or